Hey, hello, and welcome everyone. This is the ComicBase live stream. I'm your host, Pete Bickford. I am the creator of ComicBase and a few other things. And for the next hour or so, we're going to try to focus this one on answering as many questions as we possibly can about things that you've got on your mind, as well as answering some viewer mail and questions that people have sent in, and some tech tips and so forth, and even talking about things like what to look for in a new computer this year. Because let's face it, it's Christmas and we've all been very good boys. It's coming up, and we deserve something. So we'll talk about what kind of machines you'd want to do to get something that runs ComicBase beautifully, which, as it turns out, was also another viewer question. So it's kind of a twofer for us. All right. Well, anyway, before we get going, please hit that like and subscribe button if you have not yet already, and also hit that notification bell. We occasionally do videos that are outside the regular live stream, and this way you'll actually hear about them when they come up. But before we get into it too far, I see it. Streamer has done its usual delightful thing where it actually takes away all the comments as you're going. So I'm going to say there were a lot of people I saw coming here beforehand, and now all your comments have just gone away from the stream, and I guess we're starting over again. So anyway, welcome everyone who was here ahead of time. I saw Richard Scott was here. I know Greg Hecht is in the chat. And the rest of you, please, if you feel like it, just go ahead and post something there. If you have something that you want me to answer on the stream, please put it to @ComicBase TV, and it helps it flag out so I can see it a little bit better. And that should do it. I'm going to put a quick comment right now. So like testing. Just want to make sure that the loop is indeed working. All right, excellent. Oh, and by the way, we're also going out to Twitch these days. So yeah, welcome everyone who's coming and joining us from there. All right, well, anyway, that is about it for the intros. One piece of news, we are going to be doing a ComicBase After Dark tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Central Time. So 6 o'clock on the West Coast, 9 o'clock on the East Coast. ComicBase After Dark is our, we call it our speakeasy show. It's one where instead of just Pete jabbering about things all the time, we actually invite you to be part of the stream. If you want to be part of it, please shoot me a note. I'll give you, and this time I'm going to try not to shut off the show. There's my contact information. Shoot a note to pbickford@human-computing.com. Just mention ComicBase After Dark in the title, and I'll shoot you the StreamYard link. Basically, just make sure you've got a decent set of headphones. Definitely really helps on these things. But a mic and a video camera, and we'll invite you to be part of the show. Or if you just want to watch it, we'll be over on Rumble, because it's very important on things like this that we actually be able to stay what's on our mind. And YouTube, although they've gotten better these years, they no longer have like really, really active auto censoring of streams. We had things go down. I remember about 2 years ago, I said the wrong word, and then, oh, hey, you're offline. But anyway, we'll be over on Rumble. So if you want to watch that, we'll also post the link for people who just want to, go and, hang out virtually with us. But that's about all it is. It's just talking about whatever's on people's minds, life, comics, the world, etc. And usually with an alcoholic drink or so in our hands while we're doing it. So it's a lot of fun. I think you'll dig it. And please join us tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, one way or another, Central Time for ComicBase After Dark. Okay. With all that said, let's get into it. I've got a number of things going on here. And by the way, could I get a quick check from people in the audience? If you give me a quick thumbs up on the sound or not, and thumbs up on the lighting, because we've done a bit of monkeying around with both. I'm seeing our mod, in the chat right now is giving me a thumbs up. That part's good. But if the guys out there in the world are also seeing it good, just like you say, quick thumbs up or down would be very helpful to me, because we're continuing to monkey with the set here, and I'm trying to fix a few things that have been bugging us in the past. So yeah, okay, all right. Mike's Beam says all good, excellent. All right, and okay, hey, we're getting comments back. All right, we have a first question. When you add barcodes, okay, should pop it in the phone. Okay, well, fair good enough question. Let's go ahead and switch over to the demo machine, and let's see if we can answer Mike's question there. All right, so what he's saying is, when you add by barcode and you scan something that doesn't exist, all I get is a beep, no other message indicator. Shouldn't it pop up not found? It's a fair question. So what he's talking about is when you come up under here, and I believe it's under the items menu, and you say add by barcode. Now, I always remember these things as just Control-I, I'll admit. But as you beep in a code of something, and I knew this would come up, so let me see, have I got anything within reach here that involves scanning anything? Okay, hang on a second. I'll be right back. All right, so let me go ahead and put myself in the picture again and put on my headphones so I can hear myself. Yeah, so what he's talking about, okay, cool, we got it, is when you beep in a book, firing up my trusty barcode scanner, and I go like that. Oh, ha ha ha! Hilarious! I've got my barcode scanner hooked onto the wrong machine. Okay, just another minute, kids. This is fun. Give me just a second here. Let me turn off this thing so you can't see me messing around. Talk amongst yourselves. I just need to move a USB stick to another computer. Yeah, we have a reputation, and we're keeping it up. There we are. How clever of me. So the thing in question here, if you guys can see it there, this is the little tiny USB donglette or dongle thingy. And because I'm going to be demoing it on a machine, which is different than the one I'm actually talking into on my regular life, I need to move it over to that machine. And now the input from my scanner should actually go to the machine I'm demoing on. This is technical, but I'm in the computer business. I can handle this stuff. Okay, cool. Live TV, people. No, if I'm really clever, what I'm going to be doing in the future is I'm going to go ahead and actually make it so that I have a second scanner that's labeled demo machine, and that's always plugged into that USB port on the demo machine. And I just grab the right scanner and it will scan into the right place. That'd be pretty slick. I should do that. All right, so let's try it again now. All right, so you pull up add by barcode, and here's a copy of, let me go ahead and put myself back on. Here's a copy of Uncanny X-Men over there. Beep it in. Hey, look at that. And the barcode actually appears. All right, but what if the barcode did not appear? So as it scanned in 59606 and a whole bunch of other numbers, what if the thing wasn't in there? So I'm just going to type blah, 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 blah. And what will happen instead is, so if I type in a bunch of nonsense, I hit add, it just goes beep and highlights the code. All right, so why do we do that stuff? All right, so the reason we do the beep and highlight the code is because a couple of things. Number one, you might have scanned a bad code. It might have, with our barcode, it might have caught only part of the barcode. We always talk about the supplemental, so, and I'm not going to move this into the front of the camera, but actually, I have a clever way of doing this. I can make this happen. Let's go ahead and do this. So let me go ahead and I'm just going to get, well, here, let's get out of there for the moment. But like if I go to that same barcode, okay, and I'm just going to bring up its picture right now. Okay, so if you guys are looking now at the picture of the barcode down here, is actually pretty common, especially for barcode scanners which aren't the one that we sell, to catch 7596062 2092117, right? Just this main part of the barcode, and not catch the 00111, which is all you guys should know at this point. 59606 just means Marvel Comics. 20921, which apparently is the series number that Marvel gave to this version of the X-Men. And the all-important 001 is issue number 1. Next one is variation number 1. The next one is printing number 1. Without this latter group here, we don't know what the heck you're scanning. But very, very common for barcode scanners that aren't particularly trained on periodicals or so forth, to only catch the main code, because the barcode standard says that this is still a valid code even without the supplemental, and so it doesn't know any better. So we made the call a while back just to say that, hey, look, if you don't get the whole code, beep, show the whole thing, you can probably figure out, oh yeah, it didn't get the right barcode, or maybe the barcode's unknown, everything. And so it just lets you try again. But it's a fair point, is that there might be a case where it's just a barcode that's not in there yet. At that point, I think when in add by barcode, I guess I'm thinking through the problem here. I think the real question we've got is, if it didn't come up, is the answer that it didn't come up because, let me go ahead and type some gibberish again, because you didn't get the whole barcode, or the barcode you've got isn't what we had on file, which also happens. People will solicit the book with one barcode, or maybe we'll take a correction which says it's a different barcode than the one that you're holding. At which point, what you would typically do is you would say look up, and then it would let you browse by title for, was the Exceptional X-Men. X-Men. You could look up by then and kind of pick it out manually, which I think is the usual case of these sorts of things. And so, I mean, I still think we're probably doing the right thing. I think there's a very, very rare case, which is that you are actually scanning a book that's so unknown that we don't have it in the database yet, at which point, yeah, I think it's probably best that we just kind of put that one aside for now and then go back later on and just say new issue, add it to your database, put in all the stuff about it, and then ideally submit new or corrected data so it goes into our master database. But at least that's the thinking behind what we're doing. But if you disagree, let me know. We're always capable of rethinking these situations. By the way, this is also the kind of topic, oddly, that also comes up. If you want to bat it back and forth, and especially not just hear my take on the whole thing, but so I can hear your take on the whole thing in real time. ComicBase After Dark, wonderful time for discussing this sorts of stuff. All right, so, okay, so, and I want to say hi to Richard Scott, Brian Stewart, Dr. Beat from Capitola's in the house, etc. Let's see here. Some other comments on Mike Beam is in the house and so forth. All right, excellent. All right, so that was the first viewer question, but if you have others, please put them in at ComicBase TV. I will hit as many of these as I possibly can. All right, first question that someone got, and we got this actually a couple times in the last week or so, which is basically, I've got 2 copies of the same issue. What the heck do I do? How do I add them to my copy of ComicBase? All right, so let's go to Exceptional X-Men over here. So let's say that I have not 1, but 2 copies of issue number 1. So I put in my first one, I put quantity, it's in near mint condition, I put in quantity 1, great. But I've got a second issue of the whole thing, right? So here it is, and this one has been sitting by my window for a bit. The cover's not exactly perfect. I'm going to say the sucker is only in very fine. How would I put it in? The answer is I click at the far left, just like that. That highlights the whole line, and then I scroll down until I see the word, the command duplicate right down there, or I just highlight the line, I hit Control D. What that's going to do is it's going to bring up this issue guy over here. Let me zoom in again so we can see what we're doing. And I say, okay, for my second copy, what I'm going to do, what I want to do with it, all I have to do is say, well, how is it different? And in this particular case, the second issue is just in very fine, let's say. And if I want to be really pedantic about it, let's just say grading notes, say slight, weathering of cover, whatever, whatever the heck you want to say. But the point is, take whatever's different about it for you, hit, put that, say save, and then when I save it, you'll see that I have 2 lines will appear. I've got my near mint one over here, and I've got the very fine one right underneath it. But that's all I had to do is I just click the one, hit duplicate, put in whatever's different, and I'm good to go. All right. So with that said, all right, wow, I can't believe the switcher's actually working right. I've got my monitor. Everything's good. I'm having a good day, guys, with the exception of that barcode scanner thing, which I hope you'll forgive me for. All right, so next question. I had a bunch of people ask me, like, okay, so I want to buy, I want to get myself a new computer for Christmas, or I'm looking to replace my old ancient machine. What kind of computer do I need? And so it is interesting that a lot of times over here, because we're one of those companies that actually picks up our phones. So when you ask us questions, we will typically answer you. And at the same time, well, we're not Best Buy. We have our preferences, but with all questions like this, you have to ask yourself, well, what are my needs? Maybe it's not exactly the same as the guy who's picking up the phone, but I'll tell you what you need in order to run ComicBase very well, because that, of course, is the highest calling of any computer. So it depends. I mean, obviously, look, my personal desktop is as fast a machine as I know how personally to build, emphasizing in particular the things that I do all the time, which is it's got a good graphic card, it's got a ton of memory, it's got a ton of disk space, and it's got enough RAM so I'm never short. So I've got a desktop tower. It's got all those things. It's actually still only a 12th generation Intel machine. So it's a few years, a few cycles, behind the curve right now. I think they just introduced their 15th generation one right now. The problem that Intel's had is that for the last several generations, They've been a little hit and miss. It's we used to have this thing called Moore's Law. It was lovely, named after, I believe, an engineer at, I want to say, HP, might have been DEC, but it was a guy named Moore who figured out that the number of, basically the number of transistors he predicted on a chip will double every 18 months, which roughly at the time was correlated as saying that the speed of that chip could also be made to double every 18 months. And that held for a really, really long period of time, mostly through the 80s all the way up till into the 2000s. It was one of these remarkable technological predictions as these things went. The problem we got in the end, though, is heat. It wound up being that we're really good at shoving a lot of resistors into a very small amount of space on the chip, but when you're running the stuff through there, it would build up a ton of heat, and the heat got to be a real problem with the whole thing. Elaborate cooling things were invented, but all these things are they're expensive, they're hard to implement, and so forth. And short of some strange like enthusiasts like myself, we kind of hot rod our machines. We'll come up with water cooling blocks and stuff like that, which kind of keep everything rocking. When people are going for speed records on chips, they'll typically use like liquid nitrogen cooling. They'll basically be dripping liquid nitrogen straight onto the chip as it's working. But in the end, what all these guys were faced with, and it really came to a head in the early 2000s, is we got to find ways of doing more without ramping up the thermal dynamics of the chip as much. And so all the chip makers had to go kind of back to the boards and say, well, what can we do to kind of get more done with less? And they stopped seeing that next year's chip was going to be running twice as fast as last year's chip, and suddenly it was like, it's 25% faster, now it's 15% faster, now it's 4% faster, and it got like a lot less interesting from a computing standpoint, as far as being like it used to be. Like if you had a computer and you held onto it for 2 years, you were an idiot, and because the new computer would cost half as much and run twice as fast, and what the heck are you even doing? And that hasn't been true for probably a couple decades now. Now if you buy a new computer, yeah, it'll be faster than your old computer, it'll be less annoying, largely because it doesn't have all the crap going on your computer that the old one has built up over the years, which is largely a function of programs you've installed and things like that, and just errors piling up on the whole thing. So, I mean, yes, new computers are fun and so forth, but it's not as much of an oomph as it used to be with all this stuff. With that said, if you're running from, if your machine is 10 years old, for God's sake, yes, replace it. It's, it's like just everything about it is going to be annoying you on ways that no computer should. Just things like the USB standards that are built into it will be obsolete. The version of Windows that's able to run will not be the current one, and so forth. And so it's going to get progressively just icky. So yes, if you got a machine of that age, do replace it. But if you have something like in the last 5 years, you're not necessarily even going to get any kind of bump at all out of replacing it. If it really is like, if it was a decent machine in its day. If you bought like a budget machine 5 years ago, then probably you can do better, bumping into a better machine today. But yeah, I guess what I'm saying is temper your expectations a bit, because the last 3 generations of Intel have been I'm going to say, as a technology enthusiast, kind of underwhelming. And the kind of benchmark performance you see them gain are things like, oh yeah, this one's 14% faster than last generation. Like, really? That's all you can do? Now, with that said, AMD has introduced a bunch of new chips that are doing really great. They have a new series called 9800X3D, which good luck finding one. But they thought that, yeah, we think that we can make this thing like 20% faster in the last generation and still keep the thermals where it was. Turned out they're blowing it out. It's more like a 35% bump over the last generation, which is like, okay, now we're starting to get a little bit exciting. Now it's like I will actually notice when I put that in my machine versus the last generation. Of course, along with that, they're also updating all the USB standards, all the SSDs, all the whatever else. It all gets better at the same time. So that's cool, but those things are hard to find. And yeah, you're going to spend some money if you're buying the latest and greatest on the high end. On the low end, though, on the other hand, it's amazing what you can get for not much money. And so I actually want to talk about a couple of things that are in the news on that. So just to review for the moment, when you're talking about, let me get my mouse over there so I can shrink this down so we can see what we're doing. So when you're talking about a database program like ComicBase, It's really all about just a couple of things. It's really it's all about the disk, and to a lesser extent, it's about your computer's processor power. So I mean, if you have a very slow processor, you'll notice it. But if you have just kind of like a generic slow one, it'll be just fine. But as long as your disk is good. Now, if you're still using a mechanical hard drive, stop what you're doing right now and go down and upgrade it. It will change your life. I was talking to a guy this week who's still rocking a 10-year-old laptop with a mechanical hard drive, and we're doing stuff, and it's like everything you're doing in the program is taking 20 times longer than it would take if you were using a modern computer. It's so that makes a big difference. So if you still have a mechanical, like I say, the spinning disk inside your machine, yes, drop everything, get yourself a new machine. You will thank me so much. But if so with that said, though, the main things you want to get when you're going to a new machine is get an SSD, which is to say a solid state disk drive. Make sure it is ideally an NVMe SSD, which is just another way of saying it stands for non-volatile memory extended or expanded or something. But basically, it's one that's soldered onto the PCI bus, or at least socketed in so it can access the PCI bus. So it'll go much, much faster than the kind of the ones that look like imagine a deck of cards sliced. Like if someone said cut the deck of cards in half. Imagine that kind of form factor. That was those ones are called SATA SSDs, and they're the kind of thing that would fit in your old hard drive bay if you had a very old machine. Those ones were about 10 times faster. The SATA hard drives are about 10 times faster than your old mechanical one. NVMe SSDs, the ones that actually slot in, they almost look like a piece of memory that slot into your onto a special bay on your on your computer's PCI board. Those ones, they start around 20 times faster than your old mechanical drive, and they go up from there. So for instance, instead of seeing 20, 30 megabytes per second, when you save your backup for ComicBase, if you have an old mechanical hard drive, that's kind of like about what most people see. I get something more like 2,000 megabytes per second, which is to say that when I exit ComicBase and it's saving the backup, it takes like a second and a half, 2 seconds. So that's what you're looking for on the hard drive end of things. Beyond the hard drive, you want to have enough memory. Enough memory these days, 8 will get you there, 8 gigabytes of RAM. 16 is better. So I noticed the new Macs, they actually on their low end are now shipping with 16 megabytes, and they're going up from there. That's a good thing. I could pull up some stuff. I actually saved the stuff ahead of time. But more than 16 is nice to have. More than 32, you're probably never going to notice that you had. But anyway, let me show you a couple really cheap options if you're looking to upgrade your machine. Now, I don't formally recommend these guys. I mean, this isn't like an official recommendation, like like we've personally vetted them and vouching for them, whatever else. Other than I'll say that when you're looking at me demoing ComicBase on these live streams, I'm running the little brother of this guy right here. I'm running the $239 version of this guy. It's a company called Ace Magician. You have to go to their site is acemagic.com. They somehow weren't able to get acemagician.com because that apparently belongs to a guy who actually does card tricks. But anyway, so when you're looking at ComicBase, let's go to their product page here. Let's go home. And let's go to their universal mini PCs. I like these. All right, I like the site mostly because they don't fool around too much. They're giving you exactly what you need and nothing else. And their stuff takes no space at all on your desktop, which I find really charming. Plus, it makes no sound when you're using it. So when you're looking at ComicBase being demoed, we're doing it on this machine right here, and it is exactly this machine. It's a $239 machine on the thing. It's running a Ryzen 7 57U 700U processor, 16 gigs of RAM, a 512 gig SSD, and it costs $240. It comes with Windows 11 Pro installed on the whole thing. And all you got to do is hook up a monitor, mouse, and keyboard to it, which presumably you've got from your old machine, and this thing works a treat. Now, it's not my main desktop machine because I'm me, want to run 8,000 other programs at the exact same time. I want to be, streaming, videos while I'm rendering, Final Cut out to disk and, and thinking about a new music project. I'm nuts. You're probably not nuts. And so for any normal person, like this is probably what my wife will get for her next computer. If I can get her off of the ancient, thing that only runs Windows 10 that she's still using, something like this. And I also like it has one little gimmick built into this package. You see this little, glowy on-off switch here. This is actually a dial, and so when you push the button to turn it on, it'll go through 3 different states. It's got blue, which is low power, and it makes basically it ramps everything down where it makes no noise, and you can dial up to, I think, green and then red. So if you just sort of kick it up to its full full power mode switch, but that one you'll actually hear a tiny fan going, and the whole thing is just like that in the background. When you put the thing on blue, which is perfectly fine for doing most things, you'll never notice it. Silent, which I love. Anyway, this thing, Ace Magic, I'm going to say pretty damn good, assuming you're in the Windows 11 camp and you've got a Mac and not a Mac, but if you've already got a keyboard and mouse and monitor already, because then you just plug them into the whole thing. It'll support 3 different monitors at the same time. Decent specs. Have a look at them. They do sell some sexier upper end models on the whole thing, but I gotta say, this is what I would buy for a friend. For myself, I might go and blow a little bit more money. That's not what I'm looking for. Sorry about that. Sorry, I was downloading blank wallpaper on the end here because I wanted to be able to not blow out the exposure on my face when I was going to things. The old Minions wallpaper, if you remember that I had last time. Actually, whenever I put that on the screen, it bathes my screen, my face in white, glow. So anyway, little tricks behind the system here. All right, if I were spending just a little bit more money, so I had an extra $200 in the budget, I'd probably look to this one over here, which is just a more powerful processor. It's got the Intel Core i9-12900H in it, 32 gigs of RAM, and 512 gigs of SSD storage space, and it only costs an extra $200. So $439 gets you actually a really damn capable little machine. Anyway, I'm going to say on the Intel side, that's probably where I would steer most friends who have any kind of budget. Now, obviously, if you got the money, if money's no limit, just get yourself the fastest AMD or Intel chip, load it up with as much stuff as you want. Have fun with it. I mean, if you've got the money, absolutely go for it. But I'm gonna say, if you just want to get the job done, this is pretty dang good. All right. Anyway, on one other new contestant into the field, and I wouldn't normally say this, but this is actually pretty good. I'm actually going to say the Mac Mini, the new one they just introduced, the M4 Mac Mini, has just come out. It is $600, $599 plus tax. And it's specking out so far. It is really winning a lot of fans in the world. It is the usual things. It's tiny as hell. Right, it's about the same size as this other one, except it being Mac, it doesn't have the glowy lights and all the other fun things. It comes with Mac, the latest version of Mac OS and everything. You got to provide your own keyboard. You got to put your own mouse, just like the other guys on the whole thing. For the 256 gigs that it's, for the $599 that's going to cost you to get the basic one, it comes with the M4, not the M4 Pro chip, which is a better chip. The M4 chip is not bad at all. It actually has decent ports on the back, so you can actually plug things into it. But if you have wired Ethernet and things like that, I mean, there are things you're probably going to want to add on to it because Apple is Apple and they always take things away. But I guarantee this thing has twice the number of ports as any other MacBooks do. You'll be able to hook monitors in. You'll be able to hook in Thunderbolt. It's got a wired Ethernet port on the back and so forth. And as long as you pair this with Parallels, Parallels Desktop is a machine that it's software that allows you to run PC Windows things on your Mac, and we ran a live stream on this one. This is live stream number 173. I know it by heart at this point. If you look at that, we talked about how to install Parallels on your Mac. It costs it starts around $99. I think the full version is like $120 if you want to buy like a lifetime license to it. But this is software installs very easily on your Mac, lets you run Mac stuff, lets you run PC stuff, and so you've got one machine that does it all, and it really ComicBase runs beautifully on it. So that, if you're from the Mac camp, that is not a bad way to go at all. If you are looking for that, remember, you are going to have to pay for Parallels. You can buy it either as a one-time license, but they don't give you updates for new versions of the OS, which you may not care about, or you can buy as like a $89 or $99 a year kind of thing. Let your own conscience be the guide on that one. I think when I bought it, I did the one and done, because I don't like having to pay for utility software more than once if I can avoid it. But I installed that on my my new M2 MacBook that I bought, installed ComicBase on it, the entire thing from bare metal to we have ComicBase fully installed with all the pictures on the 4K archive. I think it was like 28 minutes. It was a number like that. And whenever I turn it on, I want to run ComicBase, I just double click on ComicBase, boom, it's there. It works beautifully. So if you're from the Mac side, that is actually a lovely, lovely way to go. And I'm going to say that that is a very credible option. I do not yet have my own M4 MacBook, but tech friends that I trust are actually saying very, very positive things about it. And it sounds like I'll be upgrading my own Mac Mini soon on that one. So yeah, so keep an eye on that one, and that's probably something we'll be doing. All right, so let me see. A lot of talk in the chat here. Let me go back to that one. If I can get my monitor back to the right screen. Come on. I can switch monitor. There we go. Now I see my mouse. All right, so let's see here. We get that part. Okay. Okay, so we have some additional chat on about the missing barcodes, but yeah, I'll look into that one. All right, so let me see here. Brian Stewart asks, says, I use the duplicate issue most often for signed items. I have a custom field saying is autographed. Yes or no? Okay, good use of the custom fields. And Steve Dasher wants everyone to know, when FYI, when you duplicate issues, the same cover scan will be used for both issues. You can't have different covers with the same item number. That is true. Although if you want to give yourself a custom variant number, I guess you could do that. That's an option. Yes, Brian Steer says, cores, baby, add more cores. Windows 11 supports 64 CPU cores. Jump to Windows 11 Pro for workstations if you're 128 cores. Yeah, I don't have any 128 core machines in my lifetime, but I envy you, those of you who do. All right, so anyway, that's everything I have to say about buying a new machine at this moment. But yeah, if you guys have experience with a new M4 Mac, please let me know. Like I say, people I trust are saying very nice things about it. But if you also have favorite machines of other things, let me know. I looked into trying to come up with a laptop recommendation. I will admit, in my own life, I tend to be a desktop guy. I've got I tend to, for me, it's either I'm working on my phone or I'm working on my desktop. I have tablets, I have laptops, I have all the things, but just my own personal work style, because I'm mostly working from one place. I don't often take my work from room to room as I go. I don't use laptops that much. I can't give you a sexy laptop recommendation, but I would say if you are buying a laptop, the one thing I would add into the spec list, in terms of, like, again, make sure you've got an SSD with enough RAM. So I'd go for 16 gigs of RAM on the whole thing, and a 3 gigahertz class processor at least on the whole thing. But the one thing I'd say on laptops in particular, where they tend to short you a little bit, is you're in a little bit of a dance between, like, I want a screen big enough to do a meaningful amount of work, and if you have old guy eyes like I do, you want, so the screen has to be physically big enough for you to be able to see stuff. Otherwise, you wind up magnifying it so much that you can't see a lot of your data. So that comes at the cost of portability. So you kind of can't have like a 12-inch super ultra portable laptop and also have like a 4K monitor set up on the whole thing and still be able to see stuff, unless you have like cyber vision. So get a screen that's big enough. I'm going to say for most people over the age of 40, I'm going to say 15 tends to be your sweet spot. You can go up from that, but again, you want the thing to be, not a pain in the butt, in terms of carrying it around. But the really svelte, sexy little 12, 13-inch laptops you see the kids with and stuff like that, that may not be your jam if you, especially using ComicBase, because ComicBase, there's a lot of scrolling, there's a lot of seeing lots and lots of data next to each other, which, is not the same as kids who are typing out their term paper. So get yourself a big enough screen, I guess is what I'd say. And the other thing I would say for a laptop is consider getting yourself a second screen that you can just have on a desk, or have, I've seen people in Starbucks where actually it's like they like attach the second screen to their laptop. It's like it just kind of hangs off their laptop's bezel and folds out a second screen. It's crazy, but that's actually going to be a normal thing. And those things start out $50. But get yourself some kind of second screen when, wherever you're at the place where you do most of your heavy work. Even if it's just like I take my laptop, I stick it in a dock, and then I've got a big, gorgeous monitor to do my my heavy work on. That's probably where happiness lies, because you want portability, but you also want the space. You can really settle in when you're at home base. So, anyway. I'm interested in your recommendation that is in that as well. All right. Next question was, and this one goes very well with the last question. People had questions about moving to a new machine, and I had one guy who was moving into a brand new machine just on ComicBase 2025, and then a guy was moving in from ComicBase 2013, which I almost forgot that we had that edition. Actually, I think we didn't. I think we called it 2012 R2 or something. I was superstitious about having a number with 13 in it for some reason. But anyway, a really, really, really old version of ComicBase. All right, let's cover the easy one first. So let me go ahead and switch monitors, get ComicBase back up here. So if you are moving from a new version of ComicBase, so you've got ComicBase 2025 on one machine, and you just went out, you followed my advice, and you bought yourself a brand new, screaming fast SSD machine, and you want to move your database over to it. All right, so the key thing you want to do is ask yourself, well, did I set my old machine up to automatically save to the cloud? All right, so if you look at your old machine and you look at setup and go to preferences, there was a new option that came around in ComicBase 2025, which is if you have it set to automatically compress your backup files, then this option to automatically save to cloud also lights up. Now, this works amazingly, amazingly well if, and I'm going to say there are a couple things you got to have. Number one, you got to have a fast enough machine. So if your machine is like the lowest spec 4-core, POS that you could ever have found, then you're not going to want to turn this on, because it will take too long to compress the files when you exit. It'll just grind your machine up for 2 minutes, and that will just get old fast. And the other thing is, if you have an upstream connection to the internet, like if you're out in rural, Wisconsin or something like that, and your upstream connection to the internet is measured in like 1 or 2 megabits per second, you do not want to turn this on, because you're saving, even compressed, like a 7, it's a minimum of about a 500 megabyte file up to the cloud. And if that's going to take you 20 minutes to do, you're not going to want to turn this on, because it'll just be too annoying. I mean, you want to, sometimes you'll turn your machine off and have it just go on and never think about it. On the other hand, if you're sitting there rocking like a fast, internet cable, or better yet, a fiber connection, absolutely turn these suckers on, because then something wonderful happens. Is that every time you exit the program and it saves this automatic backup over here, it will first of all, compress the whole thing in the background, and then about 30 seconds later, depending on whether you've got a suitably fast machine or not, you'll notice, if you look down the bottom right-hand corner, that ComicBase Sidekick will kick in, and it will spool the thing up to the cloud. Why does this matter? Because that means first of all, it does a couple of wonderful things. The first thing it does is it makes sure that every time you exit the program, you're backed up onto something which isn't your machine. So if you then take your machine to Starbucks right after that, and the guy at the table next to you decides, hey, cool new laptop, I think I will take it, you're not out anything, because you're out the laptop, but you haven't lost your data, because your data is saved into the cloud safely. You can just get a new laptop, or mug the guy down the parking lot, beat it out of him, and and download your database again. But anyway, sorry, the scenario got a little bit too involved in my mind there. May have something to do with my laptop having once been ripped off from me in a pizza joint. But anyway, old memories. Anyway, but if every time you've exited the program, it's saved up to the cloud, first of all, you're protected. Second of all, it means that ComicBase Mobile, so the app on your phone, will automatically have the latest stats. So within about 30 minutes of you saving up to the cloud, we'll have ground through your database on our end up on the server. You'll see the latest values of your collections. You'll be able to browse your inventory, see everything that's going on there, and it'll always be kept pretty much in sync, almost real time, if you're doing that. So that's a pretty cool thing. Now, if your circumstances are not such that you can easily save to the cloud that way, you can still save it to the cloud. Just launch ComicBase Sidekick, or in ComicBase 2025, you can go ahead. There's a new option up here under the File menu, where if I can get to highlight over there, let me go ahead and zoom that in. You can now say in ComicBase 2025, if I say save to cloud right now, it'll exit ComicBase, go through those steps, and then reopen ComicBase. It'll be spooling it off to the cloud in the background. Again, if your internet connection is super slow, you still got to wait for it. I mean, I can't make your internet connection any faster than it is, but you can kick that off manually and save it up to the cloud. And then the last fabulous thing that happens is when you go and you buy yourself a shiny new computer, and you just take it home from Best Buy or wherever you get your whatever fine computers are sold, all you have to do is go to your comicbase.com, just launch a web browser, go to comicbase.com, download ComicBase. And when you can do it right from your account, my account, registrations, and hit download for the latest version. As soon as you've installed ComicBase and you launch it for the very first time, it'll say, oh, hey, I don't see a database here, but I see you've got one in the cloud. Would you like me to download that and use that one? In which case, it will just automatically do the whole thing for you. It will just, the very first time you launch it, it'll download your last saved work, which if you've been automatically saving to the cloud, or if you saved it to the cloud right before you switched over to the new machine, will be your most current work. You'll pick up from there, and done and done. It takes no time at all. It's the easiest thing ever. So that is the cool new way of going. It does rely on a couple things being in place. Again, fast enough internet connection, a fast enough computer in order to do the compression. But if you've got those things, definitely that's the way to fly. All right. What if you don't, right? So what if you've either got a slow old machine, or frankly, you're coming in from a very old version of ComicBase, so something at least that doesn't have that feature built in. All right, in that case, what you'll want to get is yourself one of those little USB sticks. Let me reach into a drawer here where I have about a dozen of the dang things. So, you know them, these little guys right here, flipping around. You can go to trade shows or whatever else, and they will just hand them to you. Anyway, ComicBase, the file that you need, if you go to your old machine, basically what you do is on your old machine, go ahead and stick this into one of the ports on your computer. You'll see it appear as if it was a disk drive. And then all you have to do is from within ComicBase on your old machine, say File, save a copy, and save it to the USB drive. I'll kind of go through the motions on that and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So imagine this is your old machine. I'm going to say save a copy. It's going to say, hey, where do you want to save it? I'm going to point it to, if I look at my old thing, you'll see another drive will appear here, which will be my USB stick. I'm going to say I want to save it over there. Now, it'll say, by default, it's going to call itself copy of blah, blah, blah. So if I'm running a database called My Collection, it'll be called copy of My Collection. Do yourself a favor on this one. Call it just My Collection. Get rid of the words copy of when you save it to the other place. It'll save you a little bit of work when you go out the other end. It's just if you have it set up as if it was a backup or a copy, you'll wind up with a database called copy of this or copy of the copy of this. You don't want that. Just call it My Collection or Pete's Collection or whatever the heck your thing's called, and save it up to your in this case it'd be your D drive. Hit save, and then ComicBase will do that. That's everything you'll do from the old machine. You basically at that point go ahead and shut down your old machine. That way it will eject the drive properly, and everything will be written in the right place. So just go ahead and go to Windows, hit shutdown, or if you want, you just go to eject drive. If anyone even knows where that is, it's down at the bottom right hand corner of your machine, down where this is. Anyway, so but then walk it over to your new machine, where your new computer is. Install ComicBase, and then it's going, and then what it's going to do is it's going to go ahead and first time you launch it, it'll want to create a new database. Go ahead and let it do that. But then once it's done that, go over to the default place where ComicBase lives on that drive, which I will show you here. So by default, ComicBase is going to store its stuff in a folder called, strangely enough, ComicBase, right on your C drive. It'll have a folder inside there called ComicBase Databases. And that's where your database by default wants to live, right? So all you got to do is open up that folder on your new machine, open up the D drive that you'll have on that machine. Let me go and I don't know what's on this drive, on this old thumb drive right now. Without looking at it, I'm not going to stick it in. But anyway, but you're basically just going to go copy the file, drag it into this folder, and at that point, double click it. And when you double click it, it will launch ComicBase. It will automatically open up your old file. You'll see all your old work, and you'll be back in business, ready to go. You don't need to do anything else after that. When you exit, it'll make a copy right then and there, and you're good to go. But anyways, that's all you got to do. If it's a very, 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 very old version, when you open it up the very first time, it may say, so if you're coming in from a version that's prior to ComicBase 2020, it will say, hey, whoa, this thing's really, really old. We used a different database engine prior to ComicBase 2020, where we actually rewrote the entire program to be faster and, have a lot less, be able to do lots of cool new things that we couldn't have done with the old database engine, basically. But when you do that, you may get a note saying, hey, I need to convert the database over to the new format. If so, let it convert, and then it'll just open up, and you're good to go. And honestly, if you need any help with any of this stuff, it wasn't super difficult, as you saw. It's basically copy a file, drag it to the new machine, double click on it. So that's kind of the end of it. But if you do need help with that, please give us a call. We are here to help you after. We don't just love selling you things. We actually want to make sure you're happy with them. So give us a call. We're easy to find. We're just, our numbers all over the place when you look at it. But 408-266-6883. We can hold you by the hand and get you through the whole step, because we want to have you as a customer for many, many years. So we want to make sure that moving you into the new machine is goes as smoothly as we can. So happy to give the white glove service on that one. Let me see here. New Mac systems only allow for one system software and no updates. One system software. I'm sorry, I'm reading the thing. So I'm not sure about this. So when you're installing, sorry, for some reason it's very hard to click on this. So I think what Richard's referring to, and point me off if I'm wrong on this one, is so the Mac Mini, the new ones, Apple is doing their usual nonsense. And I say this as a guy who worked for Apple for 9 years. I mean, I have deep love for the core values that made the Mac happen. That being said, I will be the first guy to admit that they can be annoying as hell when it comes to certain things. And one of the things that they are annoying as hell about is the upgrade process. Honestly, it's unforgivable. I mean, you've got a perfectly good box here with 2 open slots where I could just stick very, very cheap, very, very big, RAM or disk drives or anything else into, and they make it so the stuff is locked down tighter than you can ever believe. And it's to upgrade the SSD on a Mac is someone has actually done it, but it involves like desoldering stations and special a second Mac in order to copy disk images from and things like that. It's ridiculous. So whatever, if you do buy a Mac, especially the Mac Minis, buy it with as much space as you feel like you're going to need for a while, because they're going to be absolute jerks about letting you upgrade the thing later. More or less assume you can't do it, even though physically you absolutely should be able to. So yeah, and I will also say Apple will hurt you hard when it comes to the price of the upgrades. So there's a guy who makes parody videos on this stuff. I should really find it and link it in the show notes. But it's like their answer is everything's $200. That's just how to do Apple pricing. Everything is $200. So it's like, okay, you want a Mac Mini with 16 gigs of RAM? Okay, that's fine. That's $599. That's the base price. You want with 32 gigs of RAM? That's an extra $200. You want it with twice as big of a hard drive, so have a 256 gigabyte SSD. Which, by the way, the street price on a 256 SSD is like $20. It's ridiculous. The street price for a 1 terabyte SSD is like $80. These things have fallen so far, except in Apple land. In Apple land, if you want to go from the 256 gig model to the 512 gig model, that's an extra $200. You want to go from the 512 to the 1 terabyte model, that's an extra $200. How much is an Apple Pencil? That's $199. It's like, it's maddening. They do absolutely rape you for the upgrades on the whole thing. So if you can live with the limits that you bought initially, it's a good deal. But I'm going to say the Mac Mini gets to be a substantially worse deal if you find that you need to upgrade. If that's going to be you and you have the option of leaving the Mac ecosystem, going to something like that Ace Magician I was showing you, everything, they don't freaking care. I mean, first of all, they'll sell you you saw that like the price to get twice the RAM and twice the twice the RAM and twice the hard, and to go from like a 256 to a 1 terabyte SSD. You get them both for $200, on there. And honestly, had they charged you any more, you would have literally just opened the case, which just clicks open, and stuck the modules in yourself. It would have taken no time at all, and you could just bought them off Amazon. So the PC marketplace tends to be far more competitive on these sorts of upgrades than the Mac one. The Mac ones, you do get a certain fit and finish. You can take it to an Apple store and they will fix it for you anytime that you're having trouble. But man, oh man, I really wish they could be less rapey when it comes to the whole upgrade process, because that's just not cool, guys. Anyway, that's about it. Steve Dasner says, any update on the ComicBase mobile on Apple devices? Let's talk about that one after dark. It's there's a story, and I'll tell the story, but I think I want to tell it when I have a alcoholic drink in my hand. It's coming, but not without some pain. Let's just say that. All right. Let me see. I want to hit one more, and then I think I'm going to let this one go for now, because I've gone rather long talking about new machines and stuff like that. Guy writes in and says, hey, I'm running the software, and when I double click it, every time it says installing ComicBase, every time you launch it. And that is a weird behavior. But it comes from something that is, well, it's a weird Windowsism, but it's not entirely, without explanation. So what's going on is this. Just imagine for the guy that, okay, I close a window over here. So he's going ahead, and this could happen to ComicBase, it could happen to any program on his machine, but in this case, it's happening when he launches ComicBase. So he double clicks it in whoops, I'm sorry, let me exit out of here so you get the whole demo. And by the way, for everyone who's still rocking a magnetic drive on the whole thing, so you see that, yeah, I mean, this is an SSD on a $230 machine, and it's getting, it was getting about 500 megabytes per second write speed. So it's not quite as bitchin' as my other one on my main desktop, but for $239, not half bad. If you're still working with a magnetic drive that's getting 20 megs per second, you do want to upgrade. Anyway, so what's happening to this poor guy is he's double clicking on the machine, and instead of having this launch, instead, he gets a little installer window. It says installing, it kind of hits there and hangs out, and it says installing ComicBase. And it grinds for quite a while, and he wonders what the heck is going on. What the heck was going on in his case is Windows was doing what's called defending its install. So every program in a modern computer is never really just one program. It's really like 7,000 little bits and pieces, which are all bundled together. On a Mac, what they do is they actually hide all the other bits and pieces underneath one icon. But when you're dragging it all in, it's actually installing like a million little bits. On a PC, typically what you're doing is you're running an installer, which then installs all the little bits, aside from the one program you were paying attention to. But it's, when you think about it, it's like, yeah, ComicBase is the stuff that manages a database, but in order to manage the database, well, there has to be a database thing. It's going to want to print, which means there has to be printer services. It's going to want to be able to use the internet in order to get updates, which means the internet services better be there, and so forth. And so there's all these little bits that we have to ensure are there, and they're all the right version, and they're all linked together, and blah blah blah. It's if you knew what was under the hood of a modern computer programmer and you weren't a computer engineer yourself, you'd probably be like, how the hell does any of this stuff work? But it does, and for the most part, it's really pretty good. But what happens on a computer, and this is also one of those things where, like, if you are running a really old machine, why your new machine might be better than the old machine, even if the processor is no faster, is over time, you can just get stuff that's just off on your machine. You can install programs with bad installers. You can install things that had viruses in them. You can run antivirus software that got a little too zealous and deleted things it shouldn't have deleted. That wasn't really a virus. Like, for instance, there was a program, what was it called? CCleaner, which for years would, if it was running and you installed ComicBase, or frankly any other program that installed a program called MS-INET, which MS is for Microsoft, the INET was for Internet. Basically, it was the hunk of code that you use for communicating with a web server. this is back when all that stuff, before it was all built into the Windows itself. It used to be kind of an add-on. But anyway, when you want to be able to communicate to a web server and, I don't know, ask questions like, hey, got any updates for ComicBase? This was the code that you need to make sure was on your computer, running, it had the right version, it was locked in, and it was ready to go, because otherwise we would go and try to say, hey, let's talk to our server and see if they've got an update. And if the MS-INET component wasn't there, or it wasn't working right or something like that, we would just get an error and we'd be like, hey, we can't talk to the servers right now. We don't know why. Check your system, right? Well, there was a program called CCleaner. I think it's meant to stand for crap cleaner, but that was there as a Windows cleanup utility, and it's still going today. They've just, for many years, they were overzealous in this particular thing, because there are people in the world who use MS-INET not just to talk to servers for the purposes of seeing, do you have any updates to your comic collection? They would do it to phone home for your virus, because you can talk to the internet for any number of reasons. And so the people at CCleaner said, well, gee, if we ever see anyone installing MS-INET, they're probably up to no good. They just decided. And so we will block the installation. So we will see you trying to install it. We will just delete the file. This, of course, anyone who is doing this, I'm going back a few years to tell the story. I mean, it hasn't done it for a couple of years now. But you'd install this thing. It would, with CCleaner running, it would delete half the install as it's going. You'd launch ComicBase, and we'd say, hey, man, a lot of our stuff is missing. We don't work right. Anyway, because they went and deleted our stuff. Other things, we'll go out there and delete other system files used by other programs. Sometimes two programs have to share the same print engine, for instance. We use a print engine, the thing we use to talk to your printer, called Crystal Reports, which is used by practically every business program on the planet. And so if another business program of yours goes and deletes our version of Crystal Reports that we installed without checking in with us and saying, is it okay if I delete this? Is anyone using it? If they just delete it out of hand because they're not using, they're not using the right kind of uninstaller, then what'll happen is we will launch ComicBase, and it will do a quick check and say, hey, I'm about to refer to the print engine, and the print engine doesn't seem to be here. Okay, clearly what I need to do is run the ComicBase installer again, which will then put the print engine back, and then I will go on and launch the program. So what was happening to this guy is he had a number of things going on with the system. And of course, as soon as I saw the CCleaner icon, I'm like, yeah, this brings back memories. He had programs on the system that were deleting parts of what ComicBase had just installed, or had blocked them from installing in the first place. And so when he would go ahead and launch ComicBase, it would say, oh, whoa, I'm missing parts of my installed stuff. Let me go ahead and reinstall them. It would launch the ComicBase installer in the background. He'd see a window that says, I'm installing ComicBase, even though it had clearly been installed. And it would put the missing pieces back, and then he'd exit the program, at which point CCleaner would then immediately delete the parts of the program it had just seen installed, causing the whole cycle to repeat again forever and ever. Anyway, this is not typical of most people's life, but it is part of the reason that when we tell you, hey, when you're installing really anybody's program, temporarily turn off any kind of crazy security software you've got running. It's also, honestly, it's a good reason, especially because Microsoft has very good security software built right into Windows these days. You really don't need to be paying extra for this stuff. A lot of times it's just making your life worse. So when you get a new machine that came pre-bundled with, McNortonware, the antivirus, whatever stuff, the all-in-one solution for your internet safety, consider turning that stuff off before you get going on your machine, and maybe just uninstall it to start with. These are programs typically will pay the manufacturers of your machine in order to be on there, because they know that if they can get you for the 30-day free demo, they can probably get you to renew at the end of it, because you'll be terrified of having a virus. That's kind of the way the whole confidence game works. But for a number of years now, it's really going on like 10, 15 years, Microsoft themselves has had very good antivirus, very good internet, a very good, firewall, all the kind of safety protections that you're buying from these guys have been built into Windows to start with, and Microsoft has a very keen interest in making sure their stuff is competitive, and it works very fluidly with Windows, obviously, and it doesn't ruin your life. So yeah, ask yourself some real questions as to whether you even want this stuff running on your machine to start with. But if it's running, when you run in, at least turn it off when you do installs. Because if you don't turn it off, then you can get the old CCleaner behavior where it's actually you're installing things and it's busy deleting those things, and your machine just goes round in a circle and your life gets bad. So that's what was going on with his machine. The one thing I would add to that is if you get into a mode, and you can get there if you've had a lot of programs that have been installed and uninstalled over the years, and installers fail in the middle, and they you have various trouble and whatever else. You can sometimes get programs that are kind of like half on half off your machine, where like you see them listed under add remove programs, but then when you say I want to go and uninstall this program, it says, oh, I can't, there's an error, I can't find the uninstall file, I can't do the whatever the thing is, and so it never really gets rid of out of the list, even though the program's pretty much off your machine. There's a utility out there called Revo Uninstaller. Go ahead and Google it, revouninstaller.com. This is one I'm just going to say as me. This is not as a representative of human computing, just as me, Pete Bickford. I'm going to say this has been a really solid program, and what's even better about it is you can download the free version, and it's terrific. And for 30 days, they'll even let you use their pro version for nothing. And usually if you've got like a problem with a program that has been partially installed and you just need to get rid of it, usually you don't have an ongoing need, you just need that one darn program off. By all means, I would suggest have a look, go over to Revo Uninstaller, download the demo of the pro version, let it uninstall your program, then go ahead and uninstall it, and then go ahead and uninstall Revo. The people at Revo don't mind. They're good guys about the whole thing. If you do decide to buy them, I'm going to say personally, I found them worth the $19 that it cost me to keep up with them for the pro version, because hey, like I say, on my machines, I'm installing and uninstalling things pretty much perpetually, and if one or two things a year goes wrong and leaves crap all over my hard drive, the machine is well paid for itself. So I'm just going to say I'm going to give that the Pete Bickford seal of approval on this one. Not speaking for human computing, not speaking for computers in general, but I'm going to say it's been a good one. But if you do have just junk on your machine and just stuff feels like it's half installed, or I launch things and it keeps on going to the installer, and I've turned off my antivirus but still kind of caught in this loop, try uninstalling it all as much as you can using add remove programs. If you need to go further, use Revo Uninstaller and delete it entirely, reinstall it, and then my guess is your machine is back normal and you stop seeing that installing program message ever again. All right, well, that's about it, guys. I got another thumbs up for Dr. Beat on Revo as itself. Excellent. All right, so a couple of brief PSAs. That's our usual ones here. As we said, please don't forget to like and subscribe on the whole thing. And we also don't forget we have the forums.comicbase.com, which is our forums for seeing all sorts of wonderful things about ComicBase, as well as suggesting topics to new and future episodes. And finally, there's also a torrent to Andre's world famous ComicBase cover catalog TM, which again, it's a mad project. It's the 1.25. I'm sorry, I think we're up to 1 million and. Are we 80,000 now? But it's like 1,075,000 or 1,080,000 comic covers, in the whole thing. Just imagine them all laid out in one big, beautiful PDF, which if you wanted to burn down the world's supply of toner and paper, you could print out, but don't, because that's insane. But it's amazing just to see just a visual reference of all of it, to see what all the covers of all the comics look like all at once. So that's pretty cool, and you can download the torrent to that one from the website. All right, guys, well, that will do it for this time. Thank you for joining us on the whole thing. We're pulling into the Thanksgiving season. I have a couple of shows planned out already. We'll be doing a Thanksgiving show in a couple of weeks, and don't forget, we're doing ComicBase After Dark tomorrow night. Please send me a note, once again, pbickford@human-computing.com, if you need a link to the stream on that one, and I hope to see as many as I can tomorrow night for that one. It should be a lot of fun. Otherwise, I'll see you in next week's live stream. Take care. Bye-bye.